Greetings loyal subscribers and honoured guests. I watch a lot of other YouTube channels such as Metal Jesus Rocks, Pixel Game Squad and Gaming Off the Grid to name just a few. I really enjoy when they do some game hunting or pickups videos, and I almost always inevitably end up buying something that they've recommended. Over the last year in lockdown, I've built up quite a decent pile of Xbox 360 games that I haven't got around to playing yet. One of these is Fuse, which was featured in a video by Radical Reggie back in January. I looked it up on eBay, saw that it was only a $5 and ordered a copy. Then Giant Bomb mentioned it again briefly, which reminded me that I had it, and also the whole deal around the initial trailer of the game all those years ago. When Fuse was first revealed by Ted Price at E3, it went by the name Overstrike and it had a much more colourful appearance and playful tone. The visual style reminded me of something like Team Fortress, and others have also compared it to The Incredibles, which is fair. I was quite interested in playing this version of the game at the time. Then either EA or Insomniac Games did some focus testing, and apparently the 12-year-olds who tried it said the game was too childish, so they ended up making the visuals a lot darker, adding a lot of gore, and making the cast of 4 main characters a lot darker and more unlikable. They also changed the name from Overstrike to Fuse. All of this just ended up making the whole game feel rather bland and generic, and it bombed on release. Not long after that, most people forgot it ever existed, including me. I'm a strong believer that an average game can still be worth playing at the right price though, so I decided to give the game a chance for £5. And you know what? It's really not that terrible. The gameplay is extremely similar to something like Gears of War in that it's a cover shooter. Most of the controls even map to this game directly from a Gears game, so it's very easy to get into if you've played any of that series. A lot of the enemy types map directly over from the Gears titles too, such as the small swarming robots that explode if they get too close, which are similar to wretches, and the large robots with rocket launchers, which were a bit like boomers but harder to kill. The mechanics are pretty solidly built and fun to play, but there is the odd irritation here and there. For example, I really hate the invisible enemies that sneak up on you and incapacitate you until you either die, mash the A button enough to break loose, or one of your squad mates rescued you. Usually they grab all of your squad at the same time, and I experienced a few annoying game overs because of this throughout my time with the campaign. You can tell that Fuse was really designed with 4-player co-op in mind, but playing the game by yourself isn't too difficult, at least for the story mode. Most of the time your AI controlled partners will come to your aid when you're downed, but during the more hectic firefights they can let you down because they are prone to dashing over no matter how much of a risk it is, and then getting down themselves. The character I chose to play as, Izzy, gets a gadget called the med beacon a few missions in, which can be tossed like a grenade and will heal up party members and bring them back when downed. This was a godsend in the boss fights, especially the very last fight in the game. Fuse also includes a wave-based horde style mode called Echelon, and I really would suggest playing that with other real players because it gets extremely challenging very quickly, and the AI just can't cope with the mayhem, meaning you will probably fall after a few waves. The main gimmick in Fuse that it has to try and differentiate itself from other shooters are the Xenotech weaponry. Shortly into the first mission you will find this alien arsenal, and each of the 4 characters will pick up a different gun. Dalton gets a very useful shield which causes extra damage to enemies when squadmates shoot through it, and can also blast soldiers to pieces with an energy wave. Izzy gets a Fuse machine gun that crystallises bad guys who can then be shattered into pieces. Naya has a gun that creates miniature singularities which suck enemies into them, and Jacob has a crossbow of sorts that fires liquid mercury, burning enemies to death. Lovely. Insomniac Games have definitely made quite a name for themselves with imaginative weapons in their games like Ratchet and Clank, Resistance and Sunset Overdrive. And Fuse is no exception to this list, except that with only 1 unique weapon per character, it all gets pretty samey quite quickly. 1 or 2 more for each character that are doled out as the campaign progresses would have been perfect. As you kill enemies with these weapons, complete objectives and find collectibles strewn throughout the stages, text will pop up with a score in much the same way as it does in Bulletstorm. This score is added to your character XP, and when you've filled up the bar on the screen, you gain a level and a skill point. You can then spend that skill point in the skill tree for your character and either improve some aspect of them, such as turning their regular grenade into a Fuse powered one for example, or you can buy new abilities such as the med beacon I mentioned earlier. Levelling mechanics always add a bit more incentive to keep playing and go for more skillful shots, and these abilities definitely do make your characters better. You probably won't max out your character levels by the end of playing the campaign once though. Luckily you also earn XP in the Echelon mode as well. The same applies to the cash that you pick up, which can be used to buy team perks. There are a lot of these and they are extremely expensive, so you will probably only have bought one or two of them at the most by playing the campaign. You actually earn a lot more cash by playing Echelon though, and sometimes high value targets will appear, which drop huge bags of dosh. The team perks include things like getting more XP per kill, so they could be handy for achievement hunters. I was fairly impressed with the visuals for Fuse. Everything looks decent and some of the outside environments like the tropical island or the Arctic base look very nice indeed. It's a shame then that you are only outside for very brief sections of the game and most of the time you are in quite samey looking buildings. The bright cartoony appearance of the Overstrike trailer was definitely a lot more appealing than the yellow tinged murky game we ended up with. In regards to the voice cast, you have seasoned actors like Ali Hillis, aka Lara Tassoni or Lightning, and Jennifer Hale, Femshep or Dr. Naomi Hunter, and they do a solid if unremarkable job. That sums up the entire experience of this game actually, solid but unremarkable. It took me about 8 hours to play through the campaign, which was comprised of 6 missions. I only played 1 mission per day because I felt that was enough for one session, but I was compelled to see it through in the end. If you could convince 3 of your mates to also pick up a copy of Fuse and play it online with you, you would definitely have a decent amount of fun together. You would have to play on an Xbox 360 though, because as of yet, Fuse hasn't been made backwards compatible on the Xbox One or the Series X, and I doubt it ever will be, as almost no one cares about this game. If they were to make it compatible though, that would be quite nice, and it would slot into the EA Access lineup quite nicely. All in all, I did enjoy myself for most of the time as I was playing through the story, despite some of the battles dragging on just a tad too long and the same old boring soldiers being chucked at you by the dozen. There are plenty of copies of Fuse on eBay still going for the same £5 that I paid for it, so if you fancy giving it a shot, then go for it. I would award the game a score of 6 out of 10, as it is in the harsh light of day, a very average experience all round. That concludes this particular episode of the Xbox Zone, but I may have a few more like this over the coming months, because I will be working my way through some more games on my cheap pickups pile, so stay tuned for those, and in the meantime, take care.